We are back. Happy New Year 2025. Another episode of the Golden V podcast streaming live to our YouTube channel. Our returning guest, Steve Ewen, here to talk about Vancouver Giants news and a monthly news update for the podcast, including Steve, recent action by the Vancouver Giants in the WHL trade deadline, which wrapped up yesterday. Let's dive right into that because there's some interesting moves that transpired. You and I talked a little bit about it, sort of, I don't want to say off the air, but before we went live, the fact that Matthew Hutchinson was traded. This was a bit of a surprise to me. Giants acquired goaltender Brady Smith from the Moose Jaw Warriors in exchange for Matthew Hutchinson, the BC-born goalie, and 2 draft picks. Yeah. Thoughts on that move for the Giants?
I think that Matthew probably will be better off with a change of scenery. I think that he. I think defensively the team struggled, and there were nights it was the way they checked. There was nights it was the goaltending. I think they were just looking for a change, and I think he got caught behind a 20-year-old goalie last year, and Brett Meerwald, who was very good and probably didn't play.
Yeah, right. We talked about that.
And there were nights he will tell you that he didn't play as well as he wanted to. So I think just a different look for him. Moose Jaw's building, trying to get back after spending a lot of trade capital over the last couple of years. So it's a chance for him to go there and be a number one guy. I think both Matthew and Burke Hood have had their ups and downs this year in the Vancouver net. The team hasn't checked well in front of them at points. Vancouver's a strange team because I think there's periods where you see them and you think, geez, this team could really do something in the playoffs. And then there's periods where you say, no, they could not. So I think when they're good, they're very good. And when they're not very good, they have a lot of trouble. So.
Okay. Yeah, because I was at the game December 4th against the Regina Pats, obviously the first game in Vancouver for the Pats post Connor Bedard. And the thing that happened in that game, I just pulling up the article, was the goaltender for Regina Pines steals the show with a win over the Giants. I was at that game. He absolutely stoned Vancouver, right? Yeah. I mean, he basically won in the game. And at that point, Regina was really struggling, right? I mean, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, just trying to find it, but it was basically Regina in the previous couple of games have been outscored by a huge margin. And then they come into Vancouver thanks to strong goaltending performance and beat the Giants. So that was my last experience. So, sort of at the LEC. That was a while ago, and so that's why it's good to have you back. The other thing that caught my attention was this thing about Burke Hood. Now, he last week had the back-to-back shutouts. I caught Tuesday's game on Sportsnet, and the Giants lost Tuesday and Wednesday to the Cougars in Prince George. So what's happening now with Hood? Because the back-to-back shutouts would indicate, that he's playing pretty well. And Nathan Cantor said it was 100 and some minutes of, shutout time.
140 something when you go back to the game against Victoria that he came in. I think they're very high on him. I think they think he's going to be a legit number one guy in this league before too long. Kind of the 6'3" goalie frame that teams seem to look for. I know Paul Fricker thinks very highly of him. I think, I think they think he's got a chance to be somebody very good. I don't think they're going to ask. They're not going to ask him to carry the load this year. I think they're going to give him a chance to kind of learn the league and learn what it's like to be a number one guy. There's a big difference between being the backup and getting some games here and there, and then being the guy that's expected to carry the load. And I think that's the mental challenge, right? And guys need to learn that.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about, previous episode about how effective Meerwald was last year. Hutchinson was here. Now we've seen Hutchinson move. We've seen the potential, or you talked about the potential of Hood. You see those back-to-back shutouts. The guy that came the other way in that trade from Moose Jaw, let me just pull it up here.
Smith,
Yeah, Brady Smith, also from Cloverdale. I didn't see that before. So another BC-born goalie. what does a guy like Smith offer the Giants? Is he here to create a tandem, or
I,
are they gonna
think it's
run
more of a
Smith?
tandem situation.
Right.
I think they'd like to see him be a good mentor for Hood. I think he's a guy. I mean, a year older than Hutchison, had actually both had played 43
Right.
games in the league at the time of the trade.
Right.
So not more experienced in the net.
Right.
He was part of Lethbridge at the start of the year and was traded to Moose Jaw. So this is his second trade.
Right.
Hometown guy getting a chance to come home, hoping that I think just changing a different look. I think they're hoping to get to be more consistent. I think
Right.
a trade to maybe get the room thinking about things as well. So I think that's a big chunk of it.
Yeah, I was just looking at some stats here. 6'1", 185. Hurricanes selected him in the 2020 prospects draft. 500 record, goals against 3.58. So not great, but not bad. Save percentage, obviously,
his numbers are
below
a little bit
900
better
save percentage, right? So
his numbers are a little bit better than Hutchinson's.
Okay. A couple other things, and two, the other trade the Giants made, bringing in Maxim Murinov, thank you, obviously from Moscow, Russia, Wenatchee-Wall in exchange for Tyson Zimmer. What's the play there by Barclay Parnetta and the Giants? What's
more of a physical presence. They wanted a big, strong kind of tone setter guy, a guy that could, as the cliche is now, bring, kind of drag others into the fight.
Right.
I think he's got some skill as well. He can finish. Zimmer, they going with three 20-year-old centers creates problems next year, as far as ice time, as far as not having guys ready for next year. So it gives you a chance to get maybe a Brett Olson some more ice time, or somebody else in the roster. So it moves it moves the story forward again. Another just changing of look and getting just kind of creating just a new space for them. So I think he's a more physical presence, and I think they're looking for that.
Right. Okay. So a couple other things I got listed here. Obviously, just looking at elite prospects, has some stuff coming up. So sort of the shape of the week, and I know you're on Giants this week with Brooke Ward this week. I was listening to that a little bit too. So this week, January 4th, beat the Rockets 7-0. Back-to-back losses in Prince George, and then in Kamloops tonight to face that Blazers team again. And then back home tomorrow at the LEC for another showdown against the Rockets. So can you give me a few thoughts on sort of a shape of this week? What have you seen? I mean, that's a blowout loss against a Rocket, or blowout win, I should say, against a Rockets team, right? So, and then the back-to-back losses against the Cougars, Kamloops, and another Rockets game. So what do you think's been happening sort of in those games? What's standing out to you? I mean, we've talked about the trades, but
I think they were better in Prince George than maybe the record showed. They were up 5-4 with just I think 2 minutes to go, took a penalty, gave up a goal, then gave up another goal. So I mean they had that game in hand. Good. I think good teams find ways to win 1-goal games, and that's something they're working towards. I think you learned that. So I think that's part of the process for them. Right. I think Kelowna and Kamloops are both teams that are rebuilding, both teams that were sellers at the deadline per se. Those are games, if you're going to do any damage in the playoffs, those are games you need to win. Those are games where you need to get points. So those are key for them.
Right. And sort of looking at up and down the lineup, I know we talked about it on previous shows. We have to focus on, or have a little bit of a look at what's happening with Cameron Schmidt. I mean, I can't remember if it said you're in November or December checking with us that we talked about Cameron's push to break the Giants goal record, and then obviously he got injured. So what's happening on the Cameron Schmidt front these days?
I think he's not.
lost him. I'll come back. All right, while we get Steve back, let's keep moving through some Giants updates here while we're streaming live. So, talked with Steve about back-to-back in Prince George against the Cougars. Losses Tuesday and Wednesday. Friday tonight, Kamloops to face the Blazers. Saturday at the LAC, like I said, to face the Rockets. We talked about the trade deadline moves. We're just trying to get Steve back here, so let's keep moving through. Looking at the standings in the WHL's Western Conference. Let's just take a quick look at those while I pull that up and we try and get Steve back. WHL standings, Western Conference. Steve will rejoin us on the live as soon as we can get him. But let's keep moving here. So we're going to pivot to what's happening tonight. I see I've got Steve back. Let's pull him back in. Steve, are you back? No, we're losing him again. Okay, let's keep moving here. Let's look at some stats on the Western Hockey League standings while we try to get Steve's connection issues sorted out here. I know he's had a challenge in the past dialing in, but let's keep going because what do we have? Games tonight. Obviously, we got the Giants in Cologne or in Kamloops to face that Blazers team. Looking at some trade deadline stuff here. Let's look at some standings while we try to see what's going on with Steve. Let's look at some standings in the Western Hockey League. I believe Prince George sits on top. Right. Everett's now sitting on top in the Western Conference, 28-5-3. Prince George in second. Giants sitting seventh, behind the Rochester Americans by 1 point. Portland Winterhawks are fifth with 45 points. Victoria's got 49 points. I'm going to keep you guys probably listening can't hear him, but I've got Steve back here. Hey, Steve, you're back. Sorry,
I don't know what happened. I blame Joey Kenward.
You blame Joey Kenward? Uh-oh.
That's always fun.
Oh, blaming Joey Kenward. Okay, I'm just doing some rundowns here. So let's look a little bit at the Western Conference because obviously it's Everett on top with 61. Prince George second with 53. Giants sitting in seventh, a point behind the Tri-City Americans. What kind of movement are we going to see this weekend? We'll get back to what we were talking about before you dropped with guys like Cameron Schmidt.
Because of Joey Kenward. Bring it up.
Okay.
It's Joey Kenward's fault.
Is Joey Kenward's fault always? Is that how it works?
No, that's standard. I think in the past the Giants had talked about needing to get to certain places and wanting to have home ice or wanting to this matchup or that matchup. I think talking to Barclay Parnetta, the GM, he yesterday he talked about just kind of wanting to be in the right kind of frame of mind and trending trending the right way. I think that was the important thing and not focused on who they were playing or where they were, because I do think when they're going they can hang with any of the teams in the conference. I think it's just a matter of them being consistent.
Yeah, well, I mean, and what is that consistency? Is there anything you see? Is it just the age of the players? Is it, coaching?
I think it's the mix. I think it's. I do think that there's periods where there's too many guys standing around waiting for the Cameron Schmitts and Ryan Linds to do something and bring them out of the funk rather than everyone being on board. I think when they play as a group, I think they're very good. I think when they play individually, they're very kind of mediocre. So I think that's all about. I think there's multiple guys and multiple factors that kind of both get them going and both take them off those kind of good runs. So
yeah, and I'm just looking at this,
and I like to blame Joey Kenward once more. Anyway,
okay, all right. When I send this out on Twitter, I'll tag Joey in this for Joey Kenward. He's never been on this show, doesn't know me. I mean, I obviously know who Joey is. But is there anybody on this roster then that can quote unquote stir the drink or give these guys a kick in the ass.
Oh, and I think the trades and the trade deadline and the changing a little bit of the mix, I think, was the goal that way.
Okay.
But I think this is potentially a team that could win a round or two. It's also potentially a team that could go out and 4 straight in the first round. I think it's up to them. I seem to recall
it was a Tuesday's broadcast, pre or post game. I was listening on Sportsnet. I don't know if it was Bill Wilms was there pregame. They were talking about the Giants possibly wanting to avoid some first round matchups in order to advance farther in the playoffs, based on the way the Western Conference standings were right now in the WHL, because they didn't want to play a team like Everett.
Yeah, I think that's been the thinking in the past. I think internally they're trying to get away from that, because I think that hurt them in the past. I think they were talking about matchups internally in matchups and then led to panic. I think they've beaten Prince George. I think they've shown they can hang with Everett. I think if you get caught up in matchups, I think they've shown it that if you get caught up chasing matchups and don't get it, it's not a good situation.
I have 2 memories, and then we'll get ready to wrap it up. I seem to recall, what year was that Everett matchup in the first round, and who was in goal? Where was it? Murwald? When they absolutely
that was Vikman.
That was Vikman. That's right. Because then Vikman moved on. That's right. And he was drafted by Vegas. But I seem to remember that first round matchup against Everett. And then I was at the second round matchup against Kamloops. That's right. Was that 2023? Maybe 2022, yes. 2023. But I seem to remember that season, like Everett was just like pounding them with shots. And basically Vikman almost won them that series. And then they moved on to Kamloops.
He had like a 50 save shutout in Everett in that series. So yeah, he was very good. But I mean, that was a Giants team that I think had lost 12 or 13 straight going into the playoffs, back to the playoffs on the last day.
Right.
And just suddenly caught fire. So I think you can overthink it. I think you can get caught up in numbers, and I think these are all young guys too, and things can change dramatically. So.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you for doing this. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Are you going to be at the LEC tomorrow night?
That's the plan right now. Depends on what else. Depends on what else I get assigned. So depends.
Well, hopefully you don't have.
Hopefully I don't have to deal with Joey Kenwood.
I'm going to have to reach out to Joey and have him on the show, because he's going to be wondering why he's been bashed a half a dozen times on this show.
He's going to have a good idea why he's getting bashed. You'll know. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Steve. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, eh?
All right. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.